All right, hello everyone, and welcome to the first of our series designed for educators and families. My name is Kate Berardi, and I will be the WPSU host for the evening, and I'm here with the wonderful Annie White, who will be speaking to you in just a little bit about simple interactions. Annie comes to us from the Fred Rogers Center in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, and she has some great things to share with us this evening. Before I go ahead and introduce Annie, I just wanted to let you know that if you intend to receive Act 48 credits for this talk, please stay with us until the end, and then I will explain to you how to receive them at that point. So a little bit about Dr. Annie White. Dr. Annie White is the Senior Research Associate at the Fred Rogers Center. And through her work, Annie seeks to extend the legacy of the great Fred Rogers by learning from and working with educators to support their interactions with children, families, and communities. And so she has some techniques and some thoughts to share with us today from this research that she's done. She holds a Ph.D. in Applied Developmental Psychology from the University of Pittsburgh. So we're really excited to have her here with us today. And I'd like to turn it over to Annie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'm really excited to talk with you and to be here tonight. So I'm going to share my screen. This is always the most technical part of giving a talk online. Here we go. So today we're going to be talking about how to think about the legacy of Fred Rogers in supporting educators and families in their interactions with children. So like Kate said, I come from the Fred Rogers Center here in Latrobe, Pennsylvania, which is where Fred Rogers is from originally. So we like to say we are from Mr. Rogers' original neighborhood. And here we have an archive with over 22,000 items from Fred's life. So things like scripts that he wrote, speeches he gave, letters that he sent or received from his television audience. And so we have many people visit, and sometimes we'll even have people ask us about a letter that they wrote when they were a child. So those are always fun when we can find those letters and artifacts from people's childhoods. And also at the center, we are at St. Vincent College. And so we work with the future helpers. And Fred actually dreamt up this center as he was ending his career in television, thinking about what he wanted to do next in his career, which was to work with the future helpers of children. And so that's what we do. We hope to do all of our work in service of helpers and encouraging, empowering, enriching interactions and relationships in all sorts of different settings, from K-12 to early childhood, out of school learning programs, orphanages, hospitals, you name it. Wherever there are adults and kids, we love to be there and to be working and learning alongside of caregivers and educators. And we are so lucky to be here at the Fred Rogers Center for many reasons, one of which is that we have this treasure trove of Fred Rogers quotes available to us. And so naturally, in the start of the pandemic, we looked to Fred for wisdom and guidance in how we could shape our work and also our own personal lives. And this quote I'm going to share with you stuck out to us. Fred said that although children's outsides may have changed a lot over the years, their inner needs have remained very much the same. And he goes on to say that society seems to be pushing children to grow faster, but their developmental tasks have remained constant. No matter what lies ahead, children always need to know that they are loved and capable of loving. Anything that adults can do to help in this discovery will be our greatest gift to the future. And this stuck out to us because it felt and still feels like the world around us is changing so quickly and is so different than it was even just 6 months ago, even sometimes just 2 months ago. So the outsides of what we're doing look different, even what we're doing now. You know, a year ago, I might have done a talk similar to this in person, but on the inside, we know that children need to know that they're loved and capable of loving, and that there's really a deep and simple message in what Fred shares with us that if we're doing what we can in support of children, then that's the most important thing that we can do. So I want to share with you tonight 3 lessons that we've learned about human relationship in our work with helpers across all sorts of different contexts. First lesson is that having at least one person matters. So I want to take you to some place where you might not typically think about relationships and adults and children making connections with one another. I'm going to take you to a street corner here in Pittsburgh. And this is on a morning, a typical morning, well, typical pre-COVID morning. And I'm going to share a little bit about a morning in the life of Miss Paula, who is a crossing guard you'll see here. So Miss Paula has been on this particular street corner helping children cross the street for 20 years. And she is actually, her position is within the police department. And so she is trained to think about safety, and she is measured in terms of pedestrian accidents. So she's armed with her stop sign and her yellow vest, and her success is if people safely cross the street. But I want to show you a little bit about what that looks like for Miss Paula. And I need to press play. There we go.
Good morning. I like you here. Go ahead. What's your jacket at? I'm not cold. You ain't cold? Okay. What's your, I know, see, you got a jacket, huh? He said, I am. Good morning. She's grown up to be so beautiful. Look at her. Wow. I know. Wow. She looks just like you. That's your twin right there. Oh my. Good morning. Y'all go to the high school? Yes. All right. Have a blessed day. You're welcome, baby. And your lips are shivering. I don't even care if I'm beautiful. That's it. Me too. That's the worst time when my face is cold. Yeah. It's so like, oh, mama, shh. Oh, shit, get this warm you up. But it's just like my hair is good. Eh? My face is cold. Well, hurry up in then. It's time to go in, okay? Good morning. All right. Good morning. So, when are you going to know about the election? When you going to know if you won or not? Okay. Oh, huh. I got my fingers crossed for you. Even though I didn't get a cupcake, but I got my fingers crossed. Good morning, guys. Oh, your nails. Let me see your nails. All right, now. Let me see y'all of yours. All right, now. Oh, no. Your bad self. You cold? I'm a fall baby. You a fall baby? Yeah, my birthday's November. See, I hold traffic for you. Good morning, baby girl. I like your little bun. Your mom did your hair? Tell her I give her 100%.
So I'm wondering, as you were watching that clip of Miss Paula, I'm wondering, what did you see that Miss Paula does in her typical morning? So feel free to put that in the chat, or if you want to unmute yourself and share with us, feel free to do that as well. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen here so I can see the chat. There we go. Okay. So what did people notice? She provided encouragement. Yep, and she's developed relationships with the people there that are crossing her street. She's a touchstone for the children. Yeah, I'm curious a little more about what you mean by that. She's maybe a touchstone, somebody that they see and talk to every morning. She's always there. And she lets everyone know that she's cared and she's remembered about them. She asked the one person about the election. When are we going to know about the election? Even though she didn't get a cupcake. She even notices down to the color of their nails, those little details about the children. Yeah, her interactions make me smile too, warms my heart. I think especially in this time we're in, just seeing normal life pre-COVID, it also warms my heart. Yeah, she's noticing things about them and she's mentioning it. I'm thinking, thank you all so much for sharing. Wondering what you think about the difference that she might make in those children's lives as they cross the street. She's customizing her comments because she knows them. So I think that's a great point. And her comments are really encouraging. She's, gives them compliments. I love your hair. She gives her the mom's compliments. Tell your mom I give her 100%. And you can tell that she has a relationship with these children and youth. In fact, my colleague Dana is the person who took that video. And when somebody's standing on the street corner in the middle of winter, it naturally attracts attention. And so the kids, it's at the corner of a high school and a middle school. And so the middle schoolers would cross the street and then loop back and say, what are you doing? Are you on TV? Are we famous? And so she would explain, said, well, I'm just learning a little bit more about what Miss Paula does. Could you tell me about, Miss Paula? And the teens said, well, yeah, Miss Paula wasn't here a few weeks ago and it was so weird. We didn't know what to do. And my colleague sarcastically said, you're in middle school. Don't you know how to cross the street? And she's like, well, yeah, we didn't know what to do because Miss Paula wasn't there and she's always there. She's always that smile and that warm and that laugh to greet us in the morning. So their day felt funny because Miss Paula wasn't there. And she makes the kids feel special by remembering the things. And she starts the day on a positive note. So Miss Paula might be the 50th smile that those kids are seeing, but she might be the first smile that the kids are seeing. And just like somebody said earlier, she's that touchstone for them. They know what they can get from Miss Paula, which is a warm smile, a laugh, a compliment, maybe a question. And she is, for some of these kids, maybe at least one. I'm going to share my screen again and say a little bit more about that. Thank you all again for sharing. So we think about what Miss Paula is doing, and those are all really short interactions that she's having. The longest that we saw was maybe 30 seconds or so, but she really just has the amount of time that it takes to cross from one side of the street to the other side of the street. And even in that small amount of time, she's building those relationships. We know from research across all sorts of different fields, especially about resilience, that the single most common finding is that children who end up doing well have had at least one stable and committed relationship with a supportive parent or caregiver or other adult in their life. So here we saw Miss Paula, and she maybe was that at least one stable and committed and caring person to some of these children. And sometimes maybe it's a parent, maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's somebody else, an aunt or uncle or friend, but knowing that somebody cares about us reminds me of a Fred Rogers quote. He said that human relationships are primary in all of living. And when the gusty winds blow and shake our lives, if we know that people care about us, we may bend with the wind, but we won't break. And I think this quote really speaks to me during this past 6 months when there's been a lot of gusty winds. And I can think in my own life, and maybe you can think in your own life, who's been your at least one, maybe the past few months, maybe in general, growing up in your childhood. And my guess is that you have been an at least one to a child or to a friend, to a colleague. It's those human relationships in our lives are what helps us to weather the storm and to remain standing even when it's hard, even in times like these. So the second lesson that we've learned through our work with helpers, educators, caregivers, is that the power of human relationships come from simple, ordinary moments. Sometimes when we think of relationship, it sounds like a big R, like it has to take years and years to cultivate. But we think about how these can happen in the smallest of moments. So I'm going to take us halfway around the world to an orphanage in China. And one of our favorite things to do in our work, which is often very video-based, as you're seeing, is to look at the routines, the typical things that happen. So feeding, diaper changing, lining kids up to go from recess to lunch, cleaning up, those things that just have to happen. And so we have a colleague who is in China visiting this orphanage, and this is during feeding time. And there are, this orphanage, many children, and so they have about 25 children this age that they have to feed in a short amount of time. So sometimes what happens is what people call assembly line feeding. You know, line up the children and then you just feed them, make sure they get their food, and that can happen really efficiently. Everyone gets what they need in terms of their food. But we had this colleague who was walking by and saw this moment and sent it to us of feeding. So this clip is only 10 seconds. So if you blink, you might miss it, but I'm gonna play it. I'll play it 2 times for us. And when you're watching, pay attention to this pair here on the left and see what you notice happening here. All right, I'll play it one more time in case it was choppy. All right, so when you were watching that clip, what jumped out to you? What did you see in that just 10 seconds of feeding? Yeah, facial expressions on the caregiver there, very expressive. She was smiling, her eyes got big. She got down to the level of the child. What else did people see? Yeah, there's some mimicking happening. You saw the caregiver and the child doing the same thing, some praise for eating. Yeah, she was using a really kind voice, loving voice, very, made sometimes we hear when we play this clip, and I feel it too, that those are the only 2 people in that room. They're just so locked into one another. Yeah, anything else that people noticed? Did anyone see shoulder shrugging happening? Yeah, and yeah, eye contact, mirroring, the matching of the sounds, encouraging the child to eat. Right. Did anyone notice who started some of those actions, like the shoulder shrugging or some of that mimicking? It was the educator, the caregiver, or the child? All right, we're gonna do, someone says child. Okay. Oh, see, you guys are caught on quick. So if there are any sports fans here, in sports, we sometimes see the instant replay of something really great or something we wanna see and analyze more. So we thought, what if we do an instant replay for our videos that we watch? So I'm gonna share an instant replay of this interaction, which is not this one. Okay. We'll just watch again our pair here. You can see the baby shrugs the shoulder first and the adult mimics. And there's the expressive face and the smiling, like you pointed out. Another shoulder shrug, another mimicking, and we get a bite of oatmeal in there. So we see that even in just 10 seconds, this child is obviously has a need to be fed because it's feeding time, but also is shrugging his shoulders and maybe is showing that he has a need to connect with this adult here. And the adult is seeing that need and responding to it. And it doesn't just happen once, it happens twice. And she manages to fit in 2 bites of food all in 10 seconds, which is pretty incredible. So when we think about how these ordinary moments can build to lead to relationships, we think about what's the need. Maybe in this case, we saw a clip of a child, but also sometimes adults have needs. And then what's the capacity of the other person to match that need? So here again, we saw the shoulder shrugging of the child and the adult matches that shoulder shrugging, but you can, I'm sure, think about in your own work, maybe somebody, a coworker had a need and you matched that need. We think that's what makes up those developmental interactions, just a simple need and meeting of that need. We think that these simple interactions are the building blocks of relationships, and that even in just the smallest of moments, you know, we've seen 10 seconds and then 2 minutes, but you really see how over time those little small moments build to create a relationship. And the third lesson that I want to share with us tonight that we've learned from helpers is that we don't have to be perfect to be helpful. I think that especially in these past few months with so much happening, there's this pressure to have the perfect online lesson or the perfect home setup for helping your kid with virtual learning at home. And it's so hard to, and there's so much pressure to have that sometimes, but we don't have to be perfect. I think the interactions and relationships that we have are the most important thing. So I'm going to take you, or share another quote with you from Fred. This is one of my favorite. And he said that the longer I live, the more convinced I am that the important moments of life rarely happen center stage. What truly nourishes our hearts and changes our being are most often far from the spotlight. So it's all of those in-between moments, maybe reaching out to a colleague who looked distraught after a meeting, or you know, giving your kid a little extra squeeze in the morning. But it's those out of the spotlight moments, those simple interactions that are what make up the meat of our relationship, rather than this perfect thing that you may have planned. I'm going to share one more out of the spotlight moment with you. This is also from China and an orphanage in China. This is actually a little bit different place than the one we just saw. And this comes from an orphan village. So in this village, instead of a traditional orphanage where the children live and learn at the same building, these children are actually fostered in the homes of people in that village. And so this educator here has an 8th grade level of education, and she's a teacher here at this at their school, but the children who have been orphaned are now fostered by the people in the village. And so you see, or maybe you can't see, but these children all have different levels of ability, but I will show you, this one is 30 seconds, so if you blink, you won't miss it, but still goes pretty quick. So we're gonna see what happens in these 30 seconds here. All right, so that was our last video. So one more time, if you want to put in the chat Just what did you notice about that clip? What jumped out to you? Yeah, warmth between the teacher and the children, kindness, every child is involved. So like I said, they have different abilities. For example, the one child on the teacher's lap is 6 years old, but functioning at a 6-month-old level. And the teacher is holding her up physically, but that child is just as much a part of that interaction as the other two. Yeah, the love, I saw a comment here, the child in the caretaker's arm is looking up with her, and just with so much love. All the kids are taking turns participating. So it's actually a pen with tissue paper. And it's not like this teacher said, okay, I'm going to at 5:02 plan a lesson with a pen and a tissue paper, and we're going to take turns blowing on it. But it just sort of emerged in their playing together, and they're all taking turns, they're all involved, and they all have a job. One's holding it, one's blowing on it, they take turns. Back and forth interactions, eye contact, sense of community and sense of belonging. Yeah, thank you, everyone. See all those things. Oops. Oops. So when we look at this, we see those things that you're pointing out, and we have these 4 dimensions of how we think about these small developmental interactions. So we see connection, so an emotional in-tuneness between whoever's interacting, whether like in this video, we saw everyone's happy and having fun. You can see that love there between those two. But sometimes we can be connected if we're talking about something serious, or maybe it's a hard topic and we're sad. It's that emotional in-tuneness. You can see here, the adult is at the physical level of the children, but sometimes that means adult meeting children where they're at emotionally, or adults meeting adults where they're at emotionally, finding that connection. We see reciprocity, like somebody said in the chat, sort of that back and forth or serve and return between one person and another person. So sometimes we might see one person leading and the others following, and that's totally fine and appropriate sometimes, but other times we'll see this back and forth where somebody maybe says something, does something, and then the other person builds on that in their response. There's a back and a forth. We see inclusion, and sometimes this word, we think about it in terms of in K-12 education with special education, but here we really mean the word inclusion, to be included, to help cultivate a sense of belonging, and for here the educator or the person leading to invite and involve everybody regardless of their ability or temperament or anything else, but that everyone knows that they have a place to belong wherever they are, in a classroom, in a family, maybe educators helping families belong in a school, or families helping educators feel like they belong and know things about the family. And then also we think about opportunities to grow. So moments where somebody can offer, maybe an educator will offer developmentally appropriate supports, and then take those away when the child or the other person is ready to try something on his or her own. Think about riding a bike with training wheels, taking those off, that's a scaffold. And then if you're a teacher, I'm sure you know that language is scaffolding and fading. So we think about Where are the opportunities to grow, maybe academically, but also socially and emotionally? Maybe turn taking is an opportunity to grow for these children. Or maybe it's just the act of holding something is a physical opportunity to grow. So we have a one-page tool, which I'm happy to share with you all, or we can send out a link later, that we use to sort of show these 4 different dimensions: connection, reciprocity, inclusion, and opportunity to grow. We like to think about how these can happen in the smallest of moments, like we've been seeing in these clips, and how it doesn't have to be perfect. We don't expect to see a perfect interaction. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't exist. Wouldn't make sense for anyone to have like an interaction score of 12 instead of a 4, but rather that our interactions with one another are nuanced and complex and can move from difficult to interesting to challenging to happy to sad, all within the course of a few minutes sometimes. If we go back to this idea that we don't have to be perfect, I'll share one more. We always have a lot of Fred quotes to share, but one more Fred quote with you all that has really helped to give me some peace during this time. Fred said that parents or educators can set the example just by being themselves rather than trying to be perfect parents or perfect educators. There were times when I couldn't be with our sons or when I couldn't give them undivided attention. I've realized that everything does not have to be perfect in order to be effective. And so Fred Rogers himself sometimes felt like he wanted to do more or to be more, but he had to remind himself that it's not about being perfect. It's about loving children, reminding them that they are capable of being loved and of loving themselves. And that this simple everyday out of the spotlight moments and interactions that we have with children are sometimes enough. In a hard day in the middle of a virtual learning, something where your tech isn't working, it's the deep breath, and it's okay because we're all grown-ups and children all sort of, getting through this together. If we can all agree and think about interactions as the most important thing, we can ask ourselves, how does whatever we're doing, maybe a practice, a program, a policy, a lesson, maybe just a routine that we have in our house, how does whatever we're doing help to encourage, enrich, and empower the interactions around children and their helpers or families or communities? And so we like to use this question to guide our work and our interactions and, what we do in our day-to-day activities. So the 3 lessons that we've learned from helpers, and we've learned so many more, but the 3 shared tonight is that having at least one relationship, at least one person matters, helps us to bend with the wind and to not break. That the power of relationships come from simple, ordinary moments, those out of the spotlight moments between 2 people. And that an interaction doesn't have to be perfect to be helpful or to be effective. I want to pause here and I want to give us a minute just to think about this question. So what? So, we've been together for 36 minutes so far. I've been talking a lot. I appreciate you all chatting in the box, but I'm wondering what you're thinking about, what this will mean for you when you get off of Zoom and you are in front of your child, or maybe tomorrow in front of students on a screen or in person. So I'm going to do something that Fred Rogers used to do sometimes. He would set a timer for a whole minute. And so in that minute, you can grab a piece of paper or your phone or type. And I want you to just write down whatever you're thinking about what this means and is meaning for you right now. So I'm going to grab my phone here and I will time us for a minute. Go ahead. All right, that was 1 minute. Which is, if you're writing, might have gone fast, but sometimes a minute can actually feel slow. In fact, Fred Rogers in one of his episodes had an egg timer, and he said to the children, his audience, have you ever wondered how long a minute is? And they literally sat on the TV and watched a minute happen, which is sort of crazy to think about in today's fast-paced TV that we have. Also, in this past minute, I just realized how to read the chat while my PowerPoint is up, which is a very big moment for me in doing Zoom talks. Anyways, so since I've figured this out, I'll leave the so what question up here, and feel free, if you feel comfortable, sharing in the chat what you're thinking about right now. Thanks. Yeah, Melissa, thank you. That you never know how your words or actions might affect children, that moment or later in life. Yep, human touch, voice comfort is needed by all of us. Yeah, thank you. We like to think that we're in the business of planting seeds, and you plant the seed and sometimes you never get to see what the flower will look like when it grows. When you work with especially young children, they come into your lives and you come into their lives so early on, but you never know, just like you said, what moments will mean to somebody later in life.
And Annie, we did have someone with a question about the crossing guard situation. So I don't know, MTN 11, if you want to ask now or if you want to wait until the question and answer session. Oh, you're muted, sorry.
Yeah, I don't want to take away from the positivity of this at all. But I love the crossing guard story because I think it's just those little things that show you're paying attention to children in the moment. Even if it's something little like noticing, I noticed I'm sorry, I'm on my bike while I'm watching.
Good for you.
She, multitasking. She commented on two of the girls' hair, and she's also African-American herself, as were the children. And we had a situation, I learned of a situation with a colleague who went into class one day and just commented on an African-American student's hair and said, oh, your top knot looks so great. I can't get my hair to do that, but it looks super cute. She got called in by the principal and the director of diversity because this student complained that she found the comment about her hair offensive. And, as much as I love this, and again, I'm trying very hard not to be a Debbie Downer, but when I hear stories like that from colleagues, it makes me very reluctant, even though I notice and I'm paying attention, because I don't want to get in trouble for trying to make a connection. I guess that's my only, I don't know if you have any advice on that, but it's sad that you have to be concerned about making an observational comment. That's all.
Yeah, thank you. And that's, a really difficult situation. And I think something that we are, as a society, grappling with in terms of how can we respect and understand and learn from people's experience and treat people in the way that they would want to be treated, and still build connections and notice and wonder and ask about people's lives. And so I'm not sure if I have a perfect answer for that big question, but I think that it's important that you raise that question, especially in terms of thinking about our small everyday moments. And I think that having those conversations is important and worth it. And I think that sort of what I shared earlier, that not every interaction is always, we call it on the simple interactions tool, and there's a Z column. So not everything is a Z. And sometimes we have to have hard moments in order to have growth and in order to make connections. And so I would wonder what sort of conversations might have come from that. So I don't know if that's the best answer, but thank you for sharing that situation.
Well, I would just add, I'm a nurse by trade, but I teach a health professions program. And, oftentimes one of the things we learn with patients is sometimes when they lash out at you, it's not about you. You just happen to be the dartboard that receives the dart, even though it isn't about you at all. And sometimes I wonder if that isn't the issue, but I'm just afraid that sometimes educators are reluctant to reach out, even though they want to make that connection out of that kind of fear.
Yeah. And noticing too in the chat, people had some excellent ideas, like, for example, not making observations based on appearance, maybe on other things, or thinking about prioritizing the relationship. And yeah, thank you all for sharing that too in your comments. Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts now?
Can I share something?
Sure.
I'm an African American woman, and listening to the question, I was going to say, I was wondering what the relationship was like before. And then also wondering, like, I could hear in some of the words that were used, how it could be perceived, right? Because when you think about it, hair textures are totally different. And so she was making a reference to herself about, oh, I can't do my hair like that, right? Like, and it wasn't a true comment about her, the girl herself, leaving it as, your hair is really pretty today, I really like it, or your hair is really pretty, and I get what she was trying to do, but it was just, I think it was thinking about the whole dynamics with that, but also the girl could have been having a bad day. I mean, like, I think it's so many factors with that sometimes with this, it can't always be taken personal, right? I don't know. Like, I just coming from that, being in the field as well, interacting with a lot of different people. Like, I interact with a lot of foreigners. And so, just being careful, not necessarily not wanting to make the connection, because I still try to make the connection, even if people feel offended by it, I apologize and I keep going, but I think, I say stay encouraged, right? Because the connection is what is important.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that, for having this open conversation about this question. Yeah, and like you said, keeping the relationship, and the intention is to build a relationship, then learning from what didn't work for that child in that moment, and then continuing to try to build the relationship in different ways. Yeah. I have one more thing to share before, and we have a little more time for Q&A after this, but just share a video with you from Mr. Rogers himself.
It happens so often. I walk down the street and someone 20 or 30 or 40 years old will come up to me and say, "You are Mr. Rogers, aren't you?" And then they tell me about growing up with the neighborhood and how they're passing on to the children they know what they found to be important in our television work, like expressing their feelings through music and art and dance and sports and drama and computers and writing, and invariably we end our little time together with a hug. I'm just so proud of all of you who have grown up with us, and I know how tough it is some days to look with hope and confidence on the months and years ahead. But I would like to tell you what I often told you when you were much younger. I like you just the way you are. And what's more, I'm so grateful to you for helping the children in your life to know that you'll do everything you can to keep them safe and to help them express their feelings in ways that will bring healing in many different neighborhoods. It's such a good feeling to know that we're lifelong friends.
Right. Oops. Thank you all. There is one more quote that I lied. I thought I was done with quotes, but this, Fred said that the deep and simple is far more essential than the shallow and complex. And I have been trying to remind myself of this so much recently, that if we can think about what is essential and deep and simple, not simplistic, but get at the core of what we're doing, then I think we can think about the relationships we're building, the interactions that we're having, and that can maybe be a guidepost for us in the work that we're doing. And I have my email here, and I'm happy to share that. And please feel free to reach out separately or after this. But we do have time, about 10 minutes, I think now, for more questions and conversation.
Yeah, so feel free. Annie, thank you so much. That was really great information. And thank you to everyone who commented and asked questions so far. If you have any questions, you can either ask them in the chat and I'll monitor that for Annie, or you can unmute and ask. And I'm also going to enter in my email into the chat. And if you're looking to get Act 48 credits for this, you can send me an email and I'll put what you need to have in the email in the chat as well. And then I will respond to you with a survey, because the state needs to collect the information from this chat from you, and then you'll receive your credits for it. So I'm going to put that in the chat right now, but otherwise feel free to ask questions. And like Annie said, get some conversation going. Thank you all for being here.
Notice, Ginger, you said that you've listened to the Finding Fred podcast. I've listened to that one too.
It was amazing. I'm a high school teacher,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been just so tough. And I feel like I've worked 12 hours a day every day. And as soon as I'm done with my day, I will put my earpods in, and then I'll go and then take a walk for an hour. And between Michelle Obama podcast and Finding Fred, and then there's another one that calls Happiness Lab, which talks about how you can switch the mindset to be more happy. Those are like what would get me through that day and just kind of break it up so that I can like finish the paperwork, but it was really wonderful. So if anybody likes to hear the podcast, it's highly, highly recommended.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And also the tip of taking a walk after work to, separate the working part from the home part, because I know that especially if you're all virtual, it's sometimes hard to work and live in the same place all the time. It's a good self-care tip.
Anyone else have any questions or observations?
I have a question for the helpers research that was done. What communities were, like I saw that, we went to, part of it was in Asia, when you went to orphanages there, you were in Pittsburgh. What other places were you at?
Yeah, thanks for asking. So we've done this simple interactions work, which again is this tool, but a lot of that has been video-based. So what we'll typically do is go and, spend a day just taking videos of people's just normal day-to-day activities in all over the place. And then we'll share back those videos in communities of practice. So, you know, you would watch yourself in front of your colleagues, and then we talk about it in really strengths-based ways about what we notice is working really well. And so we've done that a lot, well, all over the place. In Pittsburgh, we've done a lot of that work in out-of-school learning programs like museums and libraries and after-school programs. And then we've done some work with residential care in Canada. So at it's a ranch for boys who are maybe have been kicked out or not at their regular schools. They go to this, or it's the residential care. We've done some work in children's hospitals with the child life specialists there. And then a big bulk of our work has been with early childhood educators, so in preschools and in home care home care daycares. So, and that we've done all over the country, Georgia and all over the country. But it's been, yeah, go ahead. You're going to ask a follow-up.
I'm just thinking about the population, though, I guess the demographics. Are you looking at certain types of children or communities or families?
Not in particular. We've worked with many different kinds of communities and families, and really a whole range from, we've worked with some migrant youth in California who are undocumented, all the way to Indigenous people in Canada. Yeah, I don't know, all sorts of different. We like to go where people are curious and are wondering about this work. Yeah, it's sort of evolved organically in all these different places and contexts.
Okay. The population seemed at risk. In a way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we have maybe largely worked with people, yeah, at risk, but not exclusively. I think we're open, and we have worked with, you know, a whole range of people and settings and things like that.
Have you found any differences of of research, and you know, you said undocumented migrants versus children in orphanages versus, have you noticed any differences or?
No, actually, we did a study, and it was based in Pittsburgh, but we did a study that looked at interactions based on SES and race, and interactions looked the same based on all, like, other things look different, but interactions look the same. And so we find that, I think, adults, you know, families and educators want the best for their kids and have all the best intentions, and no matter where we go, we always find really strong moments of interactions, which has been, I maybe even take it for granted sometimes now, but it's, you know, you can spend an hour in a classroom and guaranteed we could pull out 2 minutes to show and to highlight, and that shows some really positive practice. Yeah, thanks for asking. And we also, on the website, which I can put in the chat, on our website, it shows all the different kinds of places, and then some of the research, actually probably most at this point, most of our research, like papers and a few other presentations with similar messages.
Annie, we had a question about just if there are more webinars, and there are 2 more this fall. I put the website in the chat, and you can go there. There's one coming up on October 28th. That's about virtual learning and helping families feel comfortable with virtual learning. And then I will be presenting in November about empathy in the classroom. So those 2 are coming up. They're free, and you can register on our website, which I put in the chat. So. Any other questions? These have all been great questions and conversation. And all right, well, thank you. If any of you have questions for Annie or me, Annie's email's up on the screen, and again, mine was in the chat. If you want your Act 48 credits, you can send me an email. So thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you, everyone.